Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I'm going to do the Get to Know Your Fantasy Reader tag. This was a tag that originated, it was from a blog, but it was originally the romance, Get to Know the Romance Reader tag. I will post, but Emily from, Emily Fox BookTube channel, she took this tag and revamped it and applied it to other genres. Like she did a sci-fi one, the sci-fi version, and then this is the fantasy version. If I can find the vlog, I will post the vlog along with Emily Fox's video as well. Although you probably only really, unless you're into romance, you probably only need Emily's video to look at to get the questions. But I guess if any of you guys are romance readers, I'll still post the where it originated from. Okay, you guys know the drill. I ask a series of questions, and the answers are book related. So, first question is, what is your fantasy origin story? How you came to read your first fantasy novel? Okay, well, I was, as a traditional 90s kid, I grew up with Goosebumps, the Goosebumps books, and the show. Although I've come to realize I watch the show more than read the books, because like every Saturday morning, my sister and I would she used to have a little TV in her room, and of course it was only basic cable channel, so we would watch Goosebumps every Saturday morning. So that's really how I remember it. But I did have the books, and I did read the books. It's kind of weird, but when I was in elementary school and middle school, I liked reading, but it wasn't really until, like, the Harry Potter series that I really became a hardcore reader. I guess because it's a library book, and I was still into the idea of collecting books, buying the books, rather than focusing on the reading them. I was weird. I think I've kind of leaned towards being a book collector. I mean, I always, like, one of the movies I really like, the Ninth Gate. Johnny Depp was in the movie, and I think it's based on a book. And he is a book collector, and he ends up coming across a book that might have been written by the devil or something. And so I've always had this idea of wanting to collect rare books, not that, but rare books, or being even like the in Cornelia Funk's series. I can't remember what it's called, with the girl and her dad can, when he reads a book, he can bring the characters into our world. There was a movie starring Brendan Fraser and what's his name, who played Vision in the Marvel movies? I cannot remember his name either. I can't remember his name. But I wish I could remember what the book series is called. But anyway, so I grew up with Goosebumps, and I also grew up with Animorph. I had a few Animorph books, although my sister had those books, and she might have had the Goosebumps books. And I remember there was this thing we used to do where, like, she would set up her room like it was a bookstore and place the books on the bed, or a bookstore or a library, and I would get to, she would have me come around in her room and look at the books and pretend like I was shopping for books or borrowing books or something. I remember I was like that. I always thought that was fun, and it was her way of essentially giving me her books that she wasn't interested in anymore. And then, as I implied a few minutes ago, I grew up with Harry Potter like any 90s kid, and again, that was my first series I actually really got into reading. I wasn't just getting the books, I was actually reading them and really getting into them and kind of obsessing over it. Of course, I didn't know fan culture beyond the people that I knew in school who read the books. So it wasn't like what we have today, the all online stuff. So it was like Animorphs, Goosebumps, and then Harry Potter. And then I started reading the Charm books too, based on the original series. So next question number 2. If you could be the hero slash heroine in a fantasy novel, who would be the author, and what's one trope you would insist be in the story? So actually, the author I chose is also applies to another question as well. But I said Naomi Novik. I really like her writing. So far, I liked all of her novels. There are some authors that I would love to claim as authors, but they write such a variety of stuff. Stephen King. That sometimes there's bound to be like a book that I'm not gonna like because it's just not my thing. Like Stephanie Meyer, or not Stephanie Meyer. Marissa Meyer recently published a contemporary book, and it does have a little bit of magical realism. I think I don't know if you would consider it magical realism, but it's instant karma where she can give people karma, and and that's just not my thing. That fluffy contemporary. I mean, I'll watch fluffy contemporary stuff, like, movies and stuff that are like that. Like, I love rom-coms, and, I love the Hallmark Christmas movies. Not the Movies and Mysteries channel, but the other channel, the regular Hallmark channel. Although, some of them, I've been seeing commercials for the ones on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, and some of those movies I might want to watch. That's the closest I'll come to contemporaries, watching, a movie like a rom-com or something, But, or like I grew up with all those teen dramas. So I guess I love her writing. So far I've wanted to read all of her books. And also she's made such fun, interesting, engaging stories, like from her Temeraire series to Spinning Silver. I recently just bought her latest book, A Deadly Education. But yeah, I would want her to write it. And then the other part of that question would be what's one trope you insist in being in the story, and I kind of picked 2. They're not like specific things like the chosen one or, love triangle or anything like that. It's more just these concepts I always found interesting. Which is the discovering I have magical powers. And I don't want to be a chosen one, but I feel like it kind of goes with the territory of discovering magical powers. That if you're chosen, or, maybe not though. Maybe you could just you become friends with the chosen. Maybe I become friends with the chosen one. Kind of like the idea of The Rest of Us Just Live Here. That book, I don't know who the author is of that one, but where it's kind of about the sidekick characters. It's not about the main hero, the main superhero. I guess I could be kind of like a side character of someone else's story, like a hero story, because I do not want the pressure of being the chosen one. First, there's all that responsibility. You could easily die. The bad guys are always going after your loved ones. Even if you push your loved ones away, they will always go after them. That's why when the trope of the character, and it's more a guys do this more than girls, I feel like. I could be wrong, but it always seems to me that it's the male character that does this more, is pushing away the girl because he's like, oh, I need her to hate me. I need to, protect her by sending her away, making her think I don't love her or care about her, or we're not friends or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not gonna, because the bad guy's not gonna, your arch enemy is not gonna think all of a sudden just because you push them away that, oh, they don't love him anymore. Because they know you annoyingly well, disturbingly well, so they know you're not going to just, unless you have no feelings whatsoever, or you completely move on from it, you genuinely mean it when you say, you're not just pushing them away to protect them, but you genuinely do not give a rat's ass about that person, the bad guy is going to come after them. So pushing away is stupid, because they're still going to go after them anyway. And then there's, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. Like I said, that goes with the responsibility thing, and you know, your life is always constantly in danger, as well as your loved ones' lives, no matter, like I said, even if you push your loved ones away. And just, everyone's constantly judging you. And if you fail, that's a pretty big failure. If you're chosen to save the world, then you cannot fail. So I wouldn't want to be the chosen one, but I would love to discover I have magical powers. I could go to a school like Hogwarts, and without all of J.K. Rowling's, little additions that she suddenly decided to add because she's whatever. And the other part I would love to is the other idea I had was I love the idea of like a magical door being discovered in like your house, like your attic. Like when I was a kid, I was also another kind of fantasy story that I was into was I used to collect the Magic Attic dolls, and I mean I still have my dolls. They're just in a box under my bed. I have it was a group of girls, like probably middle school age, and I don't know whose attic it was, but I remember they would always go to this attic. It must have been like an elderly neighbor they made friends with or something, or like one of them had a grandmother or something. They would always go in the attic and they would discover a treasure, treasure trove of costumes and masks and all these props and stuff, and it would all of a sudden they would look in the mirror and they would put on the costume and they would get transported into the past. So I was always obsessed with the idea, or like the idea of the rabbit hole. Even though I'm not a huge Alice in Wonderland fan, I love the idea of the rabbit hole. Like there used to be in my house before we moved here, we used to have like I don't know if it was like a sewage system or something. There was a hole in the ground, and I always imagined crawling through it like Alice in Alice in Wonderland, and then ending up in a magical land like Wonderland. Or just the idea of like I said, a magical door in an attic. Like I'm in my house now. I live in the bonus room, and this is the only upstairs area and only upstairs part of our house. In the attic, where we store like Christmas decor and stuff, is up here, and it's like this little door in my closet. And then my grandma's house, the one in South Carolina, she also kind of has a setup like that. Like there's there's like a bonus upstairs room, and then there's two doors on each side, and it goes all around the house until you get all the way to the end. And I always wanted to walk in there and walk around the house. Although I was too chicken because I was worried I would get stuck in there and suffocate. But I've always loved the idea of like, what if I went through that magical door and ended up in a whole other world, like a fantasy world. So not only discovering my powers, but also discovering another world through a magical door or a rabbit hole kind of thing. I love that idea, that like how to enter a fantasy world via that. Okay, so question number 3: What is a fantasy you read this year that you want more people to read? Did I read that this year? I think I did. Okay, so I'm not gonna. I should have grabbed it earlier so I could show you guys, but let me see. Let me see if I can grab it. Sorry, I should have grabbed it earlier, but okay, good. I went ahead and said this book, Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Just for the record, I did really enjoy Melandress. I know that's everyone's least favorite of Brandon Sanderson, and a lot of people say that it was his first written, I think, and people say, oh, you can tell it was his first written novel, because it's just not as good and the writing is different. I can't tell. But, first of all, the magic system, all of Brandon Sanderson's magic systems are really cool. But this one it involves color and making objects come alive, I think is really cool. And it's, and it is a smaller scale fantasy. It's not like very epic, although I do hear he's going to continue it at some point. But it's a smaller scale fantasy, and it's about sisters. And I think, Brandon Sanderson is he's such a fun, a fun fantasy writer. I mean, yeah, his magic systems can get a little convoluted and complicated. But this one, along with Elantris, are very, good place to start with him, I think. Not, but yeah, like I said, the magic system with color and bringing objects to life. It kind of makes me think of, no, I haven't read it, but it makes me think of a little bit of Foundry Side. I have not read that. I want to read it soon, and who knows, maybe I'll get it for Christmas. If someone notices, it's on my list. But, it also has a whole inanimate objects coming to life kind of concept, and this is very much, except for they're not sentient beings, though. You can make them do whatever you want them to do, but they're not sentient. They don't have, except for a magical sword. It also has a talking sword. I love the talking sword. He's funny, and he's so snarky, and he's also just. It's just so funny how sadistic the sword is, like, because it doesn't have a lot of emotions. It doesn't understand emotions, and it's really. And is this the one with? Yeah, this is the one with Lightsong. He also has a god, Lightsong, who doesn't like being. He doesn't believe in his own the religion he represents, and he doesn't like. He doesn't like being worshipped. He's a god, and he doesn't like being worshipped, and he doesn't believe in his own religion, the religion he's supposed to be a god of, and and he's snarky and sarcastic. So there's a lot of fun characters in this, and like I said, it's about two sisters, and I have a soft spot for stories where it's about siblings, not just the romance, but it's actually about these two siblings. And I have such mixed feelings about that, because I want more stories that focus on like siblings and friendships, but I also love the romance. I like when the romance is in there, and I like, I also don't want it to take center stage, so I'm very much in the middle. Like I know there's people like my friend Terry who loves romance and is all for romance being the center of the story. But then you have everyone on YouTube, on BookTube, who read why does everyone have to be paired up? Why do we have to have romance? Why can't it just be about two people, a guy and girl are friends? And so, and I get that, but I also get my friends wanting there to be romance. So I'm very much I have mixed feelings on it. But either way, there's a romance, but this is a good balance, I think, because it has romance. And it has one that could be potential romance. If he does ever write the next book, I could see him exploring a potential romance between two of the characters in this that become partners later on in the story. I could see them being a couple someday. But although I don't know, people would complain about, they had to pair both sisters with somebody. But this is such a fun, and I really want more people to read this along with Elantris, because I think both of these are very easy fantasies to, not easy. I wouldn't start with, but if you've been reading fantasy for a while and got into Brandon Sanderson, then I would start with this one and Elantris. But anyway, I want people to read this. Okay. Alright, so next question is, what is your favorite fantasy what is your favorite fantasy subgenre? What subgenre have you not read much from? And I said historical fantasy. I love historical fantasy when you have you have history, but then what if like there's fantasy, there's magic in this world? I'm not talking like medieval Merlin, King Arthur time, but I'm talking like even the 1920s. Like I did like The Diviners by Libba Bray. I read that so long ago. She had not published the next book. By the time she did, I kind of moved on, but I do now have Lara Dreams because friends of ours had it, which was a surprise that that particular person had it. Maybe it belonged to one of his daughters or something. But I was surprised that the book was in their collection. But I do have Lair of Dreams, but I am tempted to rebuy all the books, rebuy the whole series in that new paperback edition with the neat. I feel like the colors are very neon with the border around it, like that cover, because they've changed that cover so many times. It's not even funny. Also, I can't think for a name, but there is a booktuber who constantly complains about how they changed the covers. I don't blame her. I would be upset too if I was a hardcore fan. But what's the question? Sorry. Okay, historical fantasy. So I liked that one. I haven't finished it yet, but I mean I got a long way to go. But so far I've enjoyed the Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. But I just love the idea, especially when it's a history period in history that you wouldn't see magic in that world. Like you wouldn't expect that to be a story with fantasy elements in it. Like when you get medieval fairy tales type stories, then yeah, of course you're gonna expect fantasy because Merlin and King Arthur and all that. But there's not enough stories in different time periods. Which actually, I was thinking about that being the answer for the second part of the question, but I also decided I didn't want to I didn't want to use it for both parts of the question. So I also said I haven't read a lot of fairy tale retellings. Like I didn't read A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Cameraere. I have not got the sequel yet. And I reread the Lunar Chronicles this year, or I finished rereading it. I think I started it last year or 2018. But I finished that one. I still never read the graphic novel. I have the graphic novel on my document where I list all my series, but I still have not read it. But I still have not read enough fairy tale retellings. I feel like so historical fiction and fairy tale retellings are the subgenres that I haven't read enough from, and I do really like. And I've always wanted. I know that there are Rumpelstiltskin retellings out there. I just haven't read them, but I'd love to have a Rumpelstiltskin retelling that kind of follows a similar plot to the Skin Deep episode in Once Upon a Time. I think that was episode 14. Yeah, that was episode 14. I think it was the Valentine's Day episode of the first season. And it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but where Rumpelstiltskin was the Beast, and I just love that. I fell in love with that couple, and I'm so disappointed with the direction that couple went on the show. That's one of the many reasons why I quit watching. It's not the only reason, but it was a big part of it. And now I've always wanted a story like that, where instead of her falling for a prince, she falls for a guy that's not a prince, but like that concept, because Rumpel was not a prince. He started out as a miller himself, and I think he was, or a spinner, like he would spin wool and stuff like that, and then he got cursed. He got manipulated and tricked into being cursed. So, after a bad marriage, and his lover who wanted to, a bad, lover relationship, with Cora Mills, although her last name wasn't Mills at the time. She didn't have a last name. With Cora, he finally meets Belle, and she becomes his caretaker, and this is when he's the Dark One. But he's cursed and everything, and somehow she is the one person who can break through the curse. But then he freaks out because he's got issues. Yeah, he's got a lot. I will say that I do agree he's got issues, and they unfortunately, I think they just didn't know what to do with the character. But anyway, I would love to have a story like that, like the Skin Deep episode. Or like a Hades and Persephone kind of thing. But anyway, okay, what is your, okay, so now let me get to question number 5. Oh, this was the question originally that my answer was Naomi Novik. But then I changed it because I didn't have her most recent book, and I don't know. I felt guilty, even though I knew I was gonna buy it. I was gonna buy it at some point. So I'm gonna say so far that both Robin Hobb and Naomi Novik are the answer to this question. Which I didn't give you the question. The question is, who is one of your auto-buy fantasy authors? And I was trying not, so far I really enjoy Brandon Sanderson, although I feel like I was hesitant to say Brandon Sanderson because I have not read his middle grade, and I do have his sci-fi YA novel. I think he's the guy who wrote Sandman too. I have not read that. Because, I'm still kind of trying to determine if I'm into graphic novels, which is driving me crazy because on the one hand, I'm like, I am determined to finish, because I have started it. Terry, if you watch this video, ElfQuest, continue with ElfQuest. And I did read the Sirens graphic novel and not The Killing Joke. I've not read The Killing Joke. I'm just familiar with it. What's the other one? It has the Joker in it. I read that. Jokes and Riddles, something like that. I read that one, but although that was in the middle of the series, that series of graphic novels, it was like volume 4. And then I did read in one of my college literature classes, not the most recent one, but before we left Maryland, one of our assigned reading was the graphic novel Mouse by Art Spiegelman. I can't remember the author's name. Which is a really good, and I think for people who do cry when they read a book, I think you'll cry. You might potentially tear up a little. You might tear up or cry if you read Mouse. M-A-U-S. So it's not spelled. It's not spelled like mouse is an M-O-U-S-E. It's spelled moss. Like moss, like M-A-U-S. It's basically a father and son, and the father grew up during the time of. And they're a Jewish family, and the father grew up during the whole the persecution of the Jews during World War II, the end of the 30s into the 40s, and he's trying to he's always reminiscing, telling his son about it, telling what he went through, and his son, is of course his first response is I've heard the story before, I don't really care, we're not connecting. It's kind of about him reconnecting with his dad. And I guess I'm apologizing for not really appreciating his father. It's like they use animals to tell the story. Like the main characters are mice. And they use animals to represent the different types of humans. And it's really good. I really enjoyed reading that. And I was kind of surprised we got assigned a graphic novel. But anyway, so I'm still kind of determining if I really do light graphic novels, which I do. It's just it's hard to get into them because they're just pictures and bits of dialogue, and and then it's like basically it's like if you read a movie script with pictures in it. That's if like that showed what was going on. Like if you basically just read the the storyboard. Some movies will make a storyboard. Of what's going on in the movie. It's basically like if you read that. It's almost like you need to. I feel like almost like with Shakespeare, just like with Shakespeare, you need someone to perform the script instead of that's why I prefer watching the movies. I mean, like Larissa offered to get a while back and offered, been like, when I go home, I can send you my Marvel graphic novels, and I haven't pursued her about it, or pushed her about it because, and I figured she'd forget anyway, and I didn't, and like as I was saying, I didn't push her because I don't know if I really am. Like, I am going to continue ElfQuest. In fact, I recently was reminded of it because there was a random booktuber I just decided to watch because I was kind of, when I'm late at night and I'm tired and I don't know what to watch, and I know I want to get a really good video to watch before I go to bed. And I came across, like, I don't know if it was about big books, or if it was a video on like a haul or unhaul or bookshelf organization video, or just a random video, and that person was doing I think it was a haul video because they were showing. Oh no, they might have been going through. No, actually, it might have been she was going through, because let's face it, it was probably a female. She was going through her shelves, and I think she had pulled out her collection of ElfQuest, which is so cool to see because I've only heard Terry talking about ElfQuest. So I haven't heard anyone else talk about it, and I definitely think it's a really fun. It's a little different take on elves, and it's like it kind of has a sci-fi take on elves, but with still like sci-fi blended into fantasy. And the elves have different cultures, like elves that live in the desert that kind of have a Middle Eastern look to them. And it's such a really cool concept, and I have a volume of all the graphic novels in one big volume. Not all of them, but volume 1, and there's more than one volume, so I probably should eventually buy it myself. I just haven't got around to it yet, but I will continue it at some point. That should probably be one of my goals this year, is to actually pick up read at least a little bit more of it's a big volume. It's a tome of a volume. But okay, well, I totally lost track of the question. Okay, how auto buy. So like I said, the auto buys are so like I feel like you can't really say Brandon Sanderson. And I did Robin Hobb. So far I'm interested, but it's only because she's written this one series, the Realm of the Elderling series. I don't know if she's written anything else. I mean, she might have. I think I saw something that said that but so far I've seen mostly the Realm of the Elderlings from her. And I really like her writing. She's very great with characters. But also, her Realm of the Elderlings centers around different characters. It's not just one character's adventures and life and stuff. But then I was gonna say Naomi Novak, and I actually have bought A Deadly Education. Where is it? I don't know where it is. Where is it? Oh yeah, good. It is right here. Because I don't subscribe to any book boxes. I don't have that fancy edition, that navy blue one with no dust jacket. I wish I had that one, but I would have to subscribe to the book box. And but yeah, I just bought it. I like it, and I keep now though it was between that one and Addie LaRue. out of which hardback book I was gonna buy. So I decided to pick that one, and now it's like I knew this was gonna happen. When the book that I didn't choose, I would hear about on BookTube constantly the next few days. I would like constantly somehow I put videos where they would mention Maddie LaRue. Of course, that's no surprise because it's a BookTube favorite now. But so it's either between Robin Hobb. It's Robin Hobb and Naomi Novak. And so far, I guess I could say Brandon Sanderson. I mean, I don't know, but I haven't read his Milgram books, so I might. But anyway, okay, now I'm done with my long-winded answer to that question. So next question is question number 6. How do you typically find fantasy recommendations? Okay, so mostly BookTube. Really only BookTube. I did say Goodreads, but really only BookTube. I mean, occasionally Bookreads, but I usually hear about them via BookTube first. So yeah, YouTube, BookTube. Okay, so question number 7. What is an upcoming fantasy release you are excited about? Well, finally the sequel to King of Scars is coming out. Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. It's the book about Nikolai, although it's not just about Nikolai, and that was part of the problem why people were disappointed. Part of why people were disappointed is because Nikolai was not the central character. But I don't get it. I mean, I had a good time with it. I really liked it. You know, I loved it. And I was eager to read the next book. And I'm determined to buy it. I need to buy it right away because I don't want this to be another situation where I don't buy the next book right away. I wait too long, and then my interest starts to slowly ebb away, which is why I need to read A Deadly Education soon. Next year I need to break that whole rule of don't wait too long to read a book after you buy it. I think what I should do is read 4 or 5 books that I've had on my shelf for a while, and then read a new book after I've read 4 or 5 books, 5 of my older books that I've had for a while. Okay, so I don't know how that's gonna go, but I should consider something like that. And then I also said, but that was not coming out until March 2021. It's not coming out until next year. And then, I didn't get the date for this. Oh, I think because it's already out, supposedly, is Spellbreaker by Charlie M. Holmberg. Yeah, because I wrote, it just came out in my document, so it's already out. I just haven't gotten around to seeing it. I did not see it at stores, but hopefully, soon I'll go book shopping again soon. I mean, okay. Anyway, so yeah, those are the two I decided to go with: Spellbreaker by Charlie and Holmberg and Leigh Bardugo's Rules of Wolves, the sequel to King of Scars. Although I think the reason why when they sold the book, the marketing team decided it's Nikolai's book is because he is a main character. The story is kind of his story, but it's also Zoya's story. It's more Zoya and Nina's story. So I think Nikolai is a more likable, fun character, and his stories was really interesting, at least to me. You know, I'm always, even though I was kind of making fun of the fact that they always have the story of a in the Hallmark stories, they have quite a few movies that are, a rich guy or a prince figure falling in love with a common girl, peasant girl, and all that. And the guy always seems to be oh, I just want to be myself. I don't want to be seen as a prince. There's quite a few of those Hallmark romances where the male lover is the prince, like a prince. Why can't I meet a prince? I guess I need to go to Europe. I need to go to like England or something. Or maybe I could go to, or I could go to the. I need to go somewhere. I need to, because I want to meet a prince, but he's also got to give me a library. He's got to let me have access to his library. Okay, so yeah, but I like the idea of the prince and him being kind of like a relatable royal trope. There's actually the Take a video on it. I haven't watched it yet, but the whole relatable royal trope. Okay, so next is what is a misconception about fantasy you would like to rest? I said that, but this is just genre fiction in general, like whether it's fantasy, sci-fi, romance, horror. I want people to take it more seriously. Like, people do not, they feel like because it's fantasy or any genre really, that it's not serious fiction, or doesn't have depth. It doesn't have anything you can learn from it. Like, it's not serious. People just don't take it seriously. And they think you can't. They think it's silly or just fun. I mean, or I know people who have, who will be like, well, if you read fantasy, then you can't accept reality. Like, I have a friend who has someone in their life that, like, would rather watch, like, real life stuff like the news and, all that. And it's like, I mean, it's one thing to say that fantasy is a little confusing and overwhelming for you, but there to be like, well, you like fantasy, you can't accept reality. That isn't, just because you want to escape into another world temporarily does not mean you don't accept reality. It means actually that you do accept reality, and that reality sucks sometimes, and that you sometimes want to escape into a fantasy world. And the closest we can escape is watching a movie or reading a book or watching a TV show. Like, that's the closest, or even going to the theater. That's the closest you can get to escape reality, because reality can sometimes suck. That does not mean you don't accept reality. It just means you're willing to accept it, but every so often you don't want to live in reality, or at least, like, metaphorically speaking, because as far as I know, you can't disappear into a fantasy world. You cannot fall down a rabbit hole or go through a magical door. But people people feel like it doesn't have literary merit because they don't take it seriously, and it's apparently people don't accept reality if they like fantasy, so it doesn't have literary merit. It's like, I think it's just stupid that people dismiss not just fantasy but any genre fiction. Like, I know a lot of people that read, romance gets such a bad rep. I mean, and the other reason I don't like romance is, I just don't want to. I would rather watch a romantic movie, than spend. Now, there are some that I feel like I'm wondering, would people think I'm a hypocrite because I enjoyed Wuthering Heights, or I'm interested in, or I loved Gone with the Wind, or then I'm interested in reading Anna Karenina, which has romance in it, and it's kind of a central plot point. But I don't want to read and I like Jane Austen's novels. So I'm not so that's why, with romance, it's like, maybe I can't. I just would rather not read contemporary romance. I would rather watch a contemporary romance. But it gets a bad rep because it doesn't have any merit, any literary merit, because it's just about two people getting together. And, I was going to say, normally I would say I just have no interest in reading where that's the only important aspect of the plot. The most important aspect of the plot is two people falling in love. But I can't really say never say never. I would rather come to decide to read a romance of my own accord. But like I said, I think I might potentially get into historical if I read romance, but I don't want to read contemporary. But there have been exceptions. Like, I haven't read them, but I went through the Nicholas Sparks phase, and then I have, and there's ones like Well Met, and I can't remember, Well Played is the sequel, and there's going to be another one coming out that I'm kind of interested in that, and that's because the setting is a Renaissance festival, and that's one of the things I miss about Maryland is the Ren Fair. And the book, actually, I think the book takes place in Maryland. Just like, oh my God, that's where I grew up. Even though I hate Waldorf. But anyway, like I said, I feel like just like any other genre, fantasy gets this reputation of people not taking it seriously unless you're a hardcore fan. But now I think it's the most popular genre, one of the most popular genres. And horror fantasy. Actually, horror fantasy is another answer to the question number 4 about the part about a fantasy subgenre that you don't read that often. I do like horror fantasy. I do want to read more of it. Okay, so this question I had a hard time with. So I just quickly came up with some answers, like literally just now. I don't know if they would really work, and I'm not going to show them to you, and I wish I knew how to show, like on my screen, pop up an image, but I don't know how to do that either. Maybe one day someone will teach me. Maybe the guy I fall in love with will know how to do that kind of stuff, or will be willing to figure that kind of stuff out. If I'm still doing this, which at the moment I probably will be. Okay, so, like I said, the ones I picked were, I know a lot of people have issues with this series, but there's also a lot of people who will still be like, I love that series, I still love it to this day, and that's the Twilight series by Stephenie Meyer. Like I said, I know it has a lot of issues, but I think it takes place in the modern world, and people love vampire stories. And the magic is there's not really too much magic in it, so it's not very convoluted and complicated. It's a simple story, like a Romeo and Juliet with vampires. Although people would probably say, how dare you compare Twilight to Romeo and Juliet? Like, Romeo and Juliet is far superior to Twilight. Yeah, Edward and Jacob are not the best examples for boyfriend goals. But other than that, I think, when you're kind of new to the genre, it might be a good place to start. I could be wrong about this. Like, I just kind of picked these answers, but I feel like it's a fun series. It's not super magic heavy. If you like the romance genre, then you might like it because it's heavy on the romance. Although, like I said, Edward and Jacob are not relationship goals. But just to dip your toes in fantasy, a series like Twilight might be a good idea. Might be something you might consider, but of course I'm no expert on it, so I could totally be wrong. I just randomly picked these books. It was a 4-book series. I also decided to throw in a standalone in case you don't want to commit to a series. Oh, it's also the Twilight series is very readable. It's like it's very relatable and very readable. Okay, so the next one is the Night Circus, and the magic is a little more. Although I debated about putting this one because I thought about this one when I first was thinking about my answers for these questions. But the Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and she recently published her sophomore novel this year, which I loved. But it's again kind of the magic system isn't super dense. It's a little bit light. It's historical. If you like historical fiction and you want to get into fantasy, this is historical. It's very whimsical. It's about like a you know, and it's very a simple story. I mean, and just a romance with a magic heavy competition. It is the writing style's flower. She has a very flowery writing style, so if you don't like that, maybe this is not an option for you. But it's a standalone, so if you want to. And then the last option I said was The Hazelwood by Miss Alyssa Albert, which is also a series. I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy or going to be more books than a trilogy, but this again is another. It's fantasy, but also it's urban. I guess it would be considered urban fantasy. It's kind of fairy tale-esque inspired, where a girl, and this young woman and her mom are related. They're are always moving all the time, and her grandmother, our main character's grandmother, has written a collection of fairy tales that everyone loves, and her mom is trying to keep her away from her grandmother and being like, beware of the Hazelwood and the Book of Fairy Tales. But then somehow her mom gets kidnapped, and the only evidence of is that a page from the fairy tale book her grandmother wrote. So she, along with a fan of her grandmother's, team up to find her mom. And like I said, it's a little more magic heavy and magic system heavy, but it's not super dense. It's not like a Brandon Sanderson book. It's also, like I said, it's urban fantasy, so it kind of takes place in the real world. Actually, that might not be what urban fantasy might be. Like, you can be in a fantasy world. It's a fantasy world, but it's like it kind of is like an urban area, or a fantasy world equivalent to an urban city or whatever. I don't know though. But anyway, this is a but I figure might be a good place to consider. So yeah, The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and like I said, it might be just the trilogy. I don't know. Okay, so the last question is, who is the most recent fantasy reading content creator you come across that you'd like to shout out? And I actually said a person that I've been watching for a while, and that is Elliot Brooks. She has her own. She's an author. She's one of the many booktubers that written her own book. She has a Goodreads page. She's like considered a Goodreads author, and she's really fun. She loves fantasy. She's kind of the one who indirectly got me into the Witcher series, the books, which were the original content. The original story was in the books, and then they made the video games, and now it's a TV show. She also she loves video games. She her and her husband, he participates in the videos too, and they will talk about comic books sometimes on there, and he will sometimes pop in her channel and make his own video. And she's just really, to me, she feels very informative with the fantasy genre. I mean, maybe not as informative as Daniel Green, but I really like her. I like her personality. She's very down to earth. Like I said, that she doesn't just talk about books, she also talks about video games. And, it's just, and she loves both adult books and fantasy books. I mean, adult and YA books. She's mostly fantasy. Occasionally she'll read a different genre, but mostly she reads fantasy. And, I really enjoy watching her videos. She's one of those channels I really enjoy watching. So that is my recommendation. So that is the Get to Know Your Fantasy Reader tag created by or at least this version of it was created by Emily Fox. And I will post Emily's video on the Dropbox below, and I will also I will see if I can find the original blog post with the romance, the original tag with the romance theme. If you guys like this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up, click subscribe if you haven't already, click the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I post new videos. And I hope you are wearing your mask, you are washing your hands, and just staying safe and being kind to your fellow man or woman. And I will talk to you all later. All right, bye.